Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me. The silence hurts. It's not poetic. It's a physical ache right here in my chest. You spent 47 years married to your best friend. You raised two kids in a noisy Ohio house. You work in a school library for 19 years surrounded by chatter. And then you find yourself here in this beautiful Arizona condo at 71 years old with a cup of tea going cold, and the quiet is the loudest thing in the room. Look around. Nice furniture. A perfect view of the mountains. Jerry and I saved for this. We dreamed of this sunshine, this clean, dry air for his arthritis. We called it our someday. You spend your whole life building toward this quiet, and then you get here, and you realize it's not quiet you built. It's a museum, a beautiful, empty museum of a life you planned, but don't get to live, because the dream died with him. Pancreatic cancer took Jerry in 2019, and it took my entire future with him, just like that. We were supposed to grow old here together, travel in an RV, be those annoyingly cute grandparents at the community pool. Instead, I sold our house, packed my grief into a U-Haul, and drove to Arizona alone. It was the bravest and most terrified I have ever been, and the descent into this new quiet, it's in the details. It's making a pot of coffee just for one. It's talking to the television because there's no one to say, "Can you believe that?" to. It's the invisible trips to the grocery store where you realize you haven't spoken a single word out loud to another human being. And then there's the money, the fixed income. That's a fear they don't talk about enough. The terrifying math of outliving your savings. You become invisible in so many ways. It brings back the ghost of my mother, Dorothy. I watched Alzheimer's slowly take her from us. The fear isn't just the forgetting, it's the disappearing, the becoming a burden. I look at my children, Jennifer in Denver and Michael in San Francisco, with their own lives, their own struggles, and my heart swells with love for them. But love from a distance is a complicated thing. You don't want to be the weight on their shoulders. You call and you hear the guilt in their voices because they can't be here, and you feel your own need, and you hang up and just stare out the window. But then my dog Biscuit barks. He needs his walk, and I put on my shoes and we go out. And the Arizona sunset is so spectacular, it looks painted. Or I'll open my computer and see a comment from someone who watched one of my little videos saying it helped them feel less alone. Or I'll finally master my mother's meatloaf recipe, just for me. These are my small survivals, the stubborn, grateful actions, the threads I hold on to so I don't completely unravel. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. The big things, the retirement fund, the perfect house, they don't keep you company. It's the small connections that do. The silence won't fill itself. You have to be the one to reach into it, to make a sound, however small, even if your voice shakes. The turning point wasn't a single day. It was a Tuesday. It was the Tuesday after the last of the moving boxes was finally broken down and recycled. I stood in the middle of my living room, and the silence wasn't just in the air. It was in the walls. It was in the brand new carpet. I had Jerry's pension, my Social Security, the proceeds from the Ohio house, and it all felt like Monopoly money. The math was terrifying. What if the car needs a new transmission? What if the condo association raises the fees? What if I live to 90? That fear is a constant low hum, like a refrigerator you can't unplug. I'd lost my partner, my home, my state. And then that Tuesday, I realized I'd lost my title. For 47 years, I was Jerry's wife. For 19, I was the school librarian. For a lifetime, I was Jennifer and Michael's mom. But here, I was just the new lady in 4B, an old woman with a little dog. My identity, the story of who I was, had dissolved. I wasn't anyone's first call anymore. I was a line item in my children's weekly planners. Call Mom. And I understood. I did. But understanding doesn't fill the hours between sunrise and sunset. The loneliness didn't just bite, it moved in. It sat in Jerry's chair. It woke up with me. I'd go to the grocery store just to be around people, and I'd realize my cart had a single yogurt, a banana, a small loaf of bread, a meal for one. I'd see couples our age holding hands in the produce section, debating avocados, and the grief would hit me fresh, right there by the tomatoes. It was a physical pain, a hollowing out. I started talking to the television. I'd say, "Can you believe that, Jer?" during the news. And the silence that followed my own voice was the worst sound I've ever heard. That's when the fear of my mother's fate truly wrapped around me. Not just the forgetting, the isolation, the becoming a polite, smiling ghost in your own life. I'd look at my hands and see her hands. I'd forget why I walked into the kitchen and my blood would run cold. The financial reality started to show in small, shameful ways. I put back the nicer cut of meat. I calculate the cost of a movie ticket against a week's worth of groceries. I'd lied to Jennifer, told her I was joining a book club because I didn't want her to know I was sitting alone in a quiet condo, watching my savings number on a screen get a little smaller every month. You feel like a child and a burden all at once. You worked your whole life to get here, and here feels like a very narrow ledge. That was the beginning of the descent. Not into depression, but into a profound quiet, where I had to ask myself a question I was terrified to answer. If I am no longer a wife, a librarian, a full-time mom, who am I now? And is there enough time or courage left to find out? The children called. They did. Every Sunday like clockwork. Jennifer at 4, Michael at 6. And I'd sit by the phone waiting. We'd talk about their jobs, the grandkids, the weather in Denver and San Francisco. It was all so polite. The conversations you have with a distant relative. I'd hear the clicking of a keyboard in the background, a child yelling for mom. I was an item on a to-do list, and we all pretended not to know it. What festered was what we didn't say. I didn't tell them I sometimes cried in the shower so the dog wouldn't hear. They didn't tell me how stressful it was to have a widowed mother 1,500 miles away. We didn't talk about the fact that selling the house felt to me like they were selling my past. To them, it was just a sensible financial decision. We were all so careful, and that carefulness built a wall. Thanksgiving was the worst. My first one alone in Arizona. Jennifer sent a picture of their table in Denver. Michael sent a video of the kids playing football. And I sat at my little table for one, with a turkey breast from the deli counter, and I smiled for the FaceTime calls. "It's beautiful, Mom, so quiet," they'd say, and I'd nod because what could I say? That the silence was screaming at me? That I'd give anything for the chaos of a house full of people I loved? You don't say that. You say the food looks wonderful. You tell them you love them. You hang up, and the quiet rushes back in, heavier than before. The days began to bleed together. A Tuesday was no different from a Saturday. I'd wake up and think, what for? The purpose of a lifetime, getting the kids ready, getting to work, making dinner for Jerry, was gone. I was adrift. I'd clean the already clean condo. I'd walk Biscuit. I'd watch the clock. The loneliness wasn't just an absence of people. It was an absence of meaning. I felt transparent, like if I stood still too long, I might just fade into the beige walls. And the thoughts you're never supposed to say out loud. I'd look at the bottle of pills in the cabinet, not with intention, but with a cold, clinical curiosity. What if I just didn't wake up? Who would find me? How long would it take? Would it be a relief to my children, finally free of the worry? That's where isolation leads you, into a room in your own mind where the lights are very, very dim. You start to believe your own absence would be a gift. I missed Jerry with a ferocity that stole my breath. But I also missed me, the me who was part of a pair, the me who had answers. This version of me, alone in 4B, felt like a stranger, a fragile, anxious stranger who jumped at the sound of the mail slot. This is the silence nobody warns you about. It's not just quiet, it's the echo of a life that feels finished when you're still very much here. You realize you're not just living alone, you're living with the ghost of the person you used to be. And she's looking back at you, wondering what happened. The small survivals, that's what I call them now. The tiny, deliberate things you do to prove to yourself you're still here. For me, it was making my bed every single morning. A silly thing, maybe, but it was a decision. It meant the day had begun. I'd walk Biscuit, not just around the block, but to the little park. I'd sit on the same bench and say good morning to the same man walking his poodle. We never learned each other's names, but we nodded. We existed in the same space. That counted. I started baking again, just for me. One loaf of banana bread that would take me a week to finish. The smell would fill the condo, and for a little while, it felt like a home. I'd put on a record, Jerry's old Sinatra, and I'd dance with myself in the living room. I felt foolish, and then I didn't. It was a small rebellion against the silence. The biggest survival, the one that saved me, was so accidental. My granddaughter Chloe showed me how to make a video during the pandemic. Just me, talking to my phone. I talked about Jerry. I talked about the quiet. I posted it thinking no one would see it, but they did. Other people my age feeling just as lost. The comments. You put words to what I'm feeling. I thought I was the only one. That wall I felt around me, it had a door, and other people were on the other side, looking for it too. Here's the hard-won wisdom, the thing you only learn by sitting in that quiet for a long, long time. Purpose isn't a grand thing you find. It's a small thing you build, brick by brick, out of whatever you have left. My purpose wasn't being a librarian anymore. It became sharing a story so someone else feels less alone. It's in the morning walk, in the nod to the stranger, in the recipe you share online. I have regrets, of course I do. I regret the years I was so busy being a mother and a wife and an employee that I didn't cultivate just Barbara, the woman who existed outside of those roles. I wish I'd made more friends, the kind you call just to laugh. I wish I'd asked my mother more questions about her life before she forgot the answers. I wish I'd said, "This is hard," to my kids sooner, instead of pretending I was always okay. So what would I tell my younger self? I'd tell that busy 40-year-old me, rushing between work and soccer practice, to look up, to memorize the chaos, because one day the silence will come and you'll miss the noise like a physical ache. I tell her to nurture the friendships, the work friends, the book club friends, because one day your children will have their own beautiful, busy lives, and you'll need people who remember you when you were 30. To young people building your lives, call your parents, not out of duty. Call them because you're curious. Ask them about their first job, their first heartbreak, the dream they gave up. See them as people, not just parents. You are building the relationship you'll have with them when you're 40 and they're 70. Build it with curiosity, not just obligation.